Members of the Society of Surgical Oncology and guests, my name is Ron Weigel, and it is my distinct pleasure as President-elect to introduce Dr. Suzanne Klimburg, President of the Society of Surgical Oncology. There's one question that should be addressed. Who is Suzanne Klimburg? Dr. Klimburg is many things to many people and has played different roles throughout her life. As a daughter, as a mother, as a surgical house officer taking care of patients, as a resident with a developing career in surgical oncology, a breast surgeon, and a cowgirl, always with the pink hat. Dr. Klimburg was born in Fayetteville, Arkansas, to Vivia and Andrew, and was the youngest of 5 children with 4 older brothers. Here is a picture of Fayetteville, Arkansas from their archive from the 1950s about the time that Dr. Klimburg was born. This was a time that U.S. automakers knew how to build cars. You can see from the early years that Dr. Klimburg has always been a sweetheart, being a bathing beauty at age 1 and a charming child in her early years. Here in her family photo, you can see Suzanne Klimburg pictured here facing what many people would think is the wrong direction. However, this is fitting for someone who was destined to become a leader in her profession. Suzanne Klimburg, like all great leaders, developed a unique vision for the future based on a view of the world which others failed to see. Dr. Klimburg's early education included a bachelor's degree from the University of Florida, followed by a graduate work as a PhD candidate at the University of Miami. Here she is pictured at the University of Miami, where she spent 3 years as a PhD graduate student. Unfortunately, her mentor left the university, necessitating a change in Dr. Klimburg's scientific direction. During this time, she learned to address complex scientific problems and to overcome adversity. She redirected her career and went to medical school. Thus began the evolution of Dr. Klimburg as a surgeon. She received her MD degree from the University of Florida and remained at the University of Florida for her residency in surgery. She is pictured here with 2 of her mentors, who were also former presidents of the SSO, Dr. Copeland and Dr. Bland. They are presenting Dr. Klimburg with the Intern of the Year award. Dr. Klimburg graduated as a chief resident and is pictured here with Dr. Copeland and Dr. Bland, as well as 2 other prominent members of the Society of Surgical Oncology, which were chief residents that finished in the same year. Dr. Lee Ellis on her right and Dr. Timothy Yeatman on her left. Also pictured here is Dr. Mark McCoy, who's a cardiothoracic surgeon practicing in Arkansas. After residency, Dr. Klimburg launched her career as a breast cancer surgeon. She organized and did the fellowship in breast disease at the University of Arkansas, and after completing that, joined the faculty at the University of Arkansas, rapidly advancing through the ranks as assistant professor, associate professor with tenure, and full professor. For her entire time on the faculty, she has served as the chief of the breast service and director of the breast fellowship, which she has directed for over 20 years. She is pictured here as the recipient of the Muriel Balsam Combe Chair in Breast Surgical Oncology. Again, in attendance were her lifelong mentors, Dr. Copeland and Dr. Bland. Dr. Klimburg has received numerous awards and honors. Just to name a few, the Josetta Wilkins Award, as well as being named America's top surgeon or top doctor by a variety of organizations. She is an editorial board member of all the prominent surgical journals. She has served as president of the Association for Academic Surgery. She was a director of the American Board of Surgery, president of the American Society of Breast Surgeons, and now president of the Society of Surgical Oncology. Here, Dr. Klimburg is pictured in pink in a sea of blue and gray suits. It is here on the American Board of Surgery where I got to know Dr. Klimburg at a personal level and began to appreciate the breadth and depth of surgical leadership provided by Dr. Klimburg. Dr. Klimburg was one of the founding directors for the first surgical oncology board and is pictured here with Dr. Russ Berman, Dr. Jeff Gershenwald, Dr. Jeff Moley, and is flanked by two past presidents of the Society of Surgical Oncology, Dr. Fabrizio Michelasi and Dr. Mitch Posner. It is interesting to reflect what happens to the wardrobe of a past president of the SSO. Much of what I have already told you can be gleaned from a review of Dr. Klimberg's CV, but what is she really passionate about? As most of you know who have worked with Dr. Klimberg, it is education. She is pictured here at a regional breast conference with several of her colleagues in breast surgery, including Drs. William Dooley, Teresa Cusick, Ginny Herman, Julie Morgenthaler, Carol Fabian, and Lynette Smith, who was one of Dr. Klimberg's breast fellows. Working with colleagues interested in breast diseases, she started the first fellowship in breast surgery. She has been a mentor to countless residents and fellows throughout the years. She redesigned the SSO educational programs and has been a champion of the Fellows Institute, one of the premier educational offerings by the SSO. Outside of her surgical career, Dr. Klimberg is pictured here with family and friends as a fisherwoman who has clearly reeled in a number of trophy bass. Having grown up with four brothers, one would think that Dr. Klimberg knows not to make fun of the size of a guy's fish. In addition to Dr. Klimberg's outstanding career as a surgical oncologist, she has embraced the demands of also being a wife, a mother, and a mentor to so many individuals. Again, she's pictured here in a pink hat with her husband Sam and one of her daughters Sadie. This picture represents one of the ways she has been able to be successful at so many things, which is combining the love and passion for family with that of finding new treatments for breast cancer and fundraising, as in this race for the cure to advance and improve the treatment of breast cancer. Dr. Klimberg has two beautiful daughters, Sadie and Spencer, which have been a motivation for her passion to make life a better place for future generations. My fellow surgical oncologists and guests, I present to you Dr. Suzanne Klimberg, President of the Society of Surgical Oncology.
Thank you. I used to be skinny. Thank you. Thanks, Ron, for your kind introduction and for being such a great partner, not only this year, but for the last 7 years in so many of our educational efforts together and on the American Board of Surgery, the Surgical Oncology Board, and the SSO. I'd like to begin with a thank you to Dr. Copeland, my residency chair, and Dr. Bland, my residency director, for their training and continuing mentoring to this very day, and to my fellow chiefs who you've just heard about. To my many mentors who have contributed so much to my education in a variety of different venues over the years. Thanks to my clinical team at home, who are sitting in the front row here, and those I do translational research with. My two PhDs are there in the center, including my fellows, to whom, two of whom are presenting at the meeting today. Many thanks to my regional partners that you've already heard about, who join in a collaborative to improve care in the region and research to the rural states of what I call the coma states, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas. And thanks to my pioneers, my patients, who help us by participating in research, and especially to Representative Josetta Wilkins, a breast cancer survivor in pink there, with whom I helped write and pass the Arkansas Breast Cancer Act of 1997 that has funded more than $60 million in Arkansas for indigent breast care and over $16 million in breast cancer research. Thanks to my family, who have given me of their time and support in pursuit of my work. Sadie is there on the left at Cotillion with her father who can't dance. And I asked him one time, why can't you dance? And you took 3 years of Cotillion, and he said, I'll tell you, I took 3 years of Spanish too. And Spencer's on the right with her dog Sky. Now, 2013 was SSO's first as a standalone operation led by then President Monica Morrow and is one of the major accomplishments of that year. Eileen Widmer, our executive director, has organized the staff structure with a full team of highly qualified and capable and hardworking members. The executive committee and executive council worked hard to expand global and educational initiatives, while the finance committee, led by Dan Coit, worked on making the SSO fiscally sound and creating research and development funds and now strategic funds totaling nearly $500,000 to invest back into new global and educational initiatives for the SSO. These efforts were supported by the James Ewing Foundation, led by Bill Kantz, which also sponsors the James Ewing Lecture, the Harvey Baker Travel Award, and the James Ewing Layman's Award, and now the CIA's. And to the Corporate Relations Committee, headed by Ron Martin, aided by Deb Cohen and Patty Price, who now know how to get blood out of a turnip, as we say in the South. And the Membership Committee, led by Dr. Giuliano, who has continued to increase, diversify, and expand our global ranks. All this infrastructure has positioned us to what I wanted to coin the term translational education. So what is our aim and what have we accomplished? Well, the mission is to improve patient care by advancing science and the practice of surgical oncology worldwide. So in March of 2011, the Executive Council funded the first educational retreat that was then held later in December of that year, facilitated by Dr. Charmaine Cummings, who subsequently was hired into a newly created position as Education Director and has aptly helped us build our educational offerings. The main conclusion of that meeting are represented here, that we had to educate more than once a year at our meeting and should provide enduring materials throughout a number of different venues globally, and that the core of that knowledge should be based on a blueprint established by the training committee led by legendary Russ Berman. Further, this knowledge had to be disseminated via a number of different vehicles and needed to be paired with CME and Maintenance of Certification Part 2, which meant we had to assess outcomes, so said knowledge was not lost in translation. Why Maintenance of Certification, or MOC? Certified by the American Board of Medical Specialties to provide a more frequent and comprehensive assessment of medical performance, it gives diplomats a proactive position in the healthcare debate, using surgeon-developed metrics and surgeon-developed reporting methods. Without it, we do not have standardized care, or basically what I like to call treatment by chance. That is, your care will depend more on what door you entered than who will give you the best care, or what is the best care. There are 4 parts to MOC, but the one I wish to focus on is Part 2, as it requires self-assessment that is relevant to the diplomat's practice, for which there are relatively few resources specific to surgical oncology at the time we began. The requirements are 60 hours every 3-year period with a testing score of at least 75%. So you just have to make a C. The plan by the board at that time was to let the materials be developed on the individual societal level. So that is what we set out to do. Just like translation, education is a complex process, and the basic core knowledge to be learned can be presented in a myriad of different ways. So one DNA can become many different proteins. So what I would like to talk about in the next few minutes is to present how the SSO has put considerable time and effort, infrastructure, and resources into designing and launching a spectrum of innovative hands-on education and training programs aimed at the practicing general surgeon, surgical oncologist, and/or trainees. Nearly 10 years ago, conceived by the Education Committee, Dr. Charlie Cox started one of the first initiatives on hands-on training outside the annual meeting, the breast course. This course was designed for the breast fellows to learn basic material and hands-on ultrasound, something that not all fellows across the country were getting at the time or even now. In 2011, Charlie, myself, and along with Dave Bartlett and Chuck Scoggins, designed the first Fellows Institute that included didactics and hands-on training for breast and surgical oncology trainees, partnering with industry who donated tremendous educational grant support and in-kind material, including the Ethicon Institute. In 2012, again with growing support from industry and greater national participation, we utilized the facilities at Ethicon and the brand new facilities at Mamitome. In 2013, the Fellows Institute took on a more formal structure with Kevin Rogan as vice chair of the training committee, who took over the reins to make sure that the Institute was in sync with training requirements. 109 fellows attended, almost all the fellows in the country, including for the first time 14 hepatobiliary fellows and 2 surgical oncologists from NCI Mexico. The success of the program was greatly attributed to the efforts of members of the Fellows Institute Program Planning Committee, Dr. Rogan, Joe Dietz, Mary Gimignani, Charles Scoggins, and Chan Rout, as well as Rohan Jeharaja, who is on the training committee of SSO and the executive council of AHPBA. The Fellows Institute now represents a collaborative effort between the SSO, the American Society of Breast Surgeons, the American Society of Transplant Surgeons, and the America's Hepatobiliary Association. Myself, as then chair of the Education Council, and Dr. Ron Weigel held the Educational Council retreat in December of 2011. And designated disease site work group chairs or their representatives gathered to review and prioritize the educational areas as set forth by the Council. Danny Takanishi was there and emphasized that almost all initiatives should carry CME credit, including MOC Part 2. This brings with it the need to follow strict ACCME guidelines in planning, implementing, and evaluating activities. Since the group felt that most educational activities would include or be exclusively housed on the Internet, projects and activities will require software and other IT solutions with in-depth review of IT resources for the education activity. Rick Bleicher and colleagues worked hard to get the process going for upgrading our IT systems and upgrading our woeful website. The committee launched, our new site will be up later this fall. And thanks to Rick, who has a background in design, it's going to be fantastic. The committee launched a social media platform, and SSO has now 620 followers on Facebook, over 1,200 on Twitter, and almost 1,000 on LinkedIn. For these educational initiatives, the Educational Products Committee, led by Eileen Sergensen, reviews the business plan for the purpose, target audience, needs and gaps, cost, and potential revenue, and a timeline which benchmarks for completion. Finally, the Executive Council review the business plans, allocates resources as appropriate, and provide ultimate approval for educational initiatives. I want to talk about 3 of these priorities that have been implemented since that time. The first educational need had to do with this group is the inaugural Surgical Oncology Board, which has just been introduced to you, Russ and Fabrizio, who spearheaded the certification and served as the first chair, myself, Mitch, and Jeff, Jeff Squared. And the SOB makeup, the Surgical Oncology Board makeup is here today, and underscored is our representatives today: Russ Berman, Jeff Gershenwald, Mitch Posner, and Doug Tyler. The first set of fellows will soon take the new certification written exam in complex general surgical oncology this fall. Members of the SSO also needed CME and MOC development, and so we developed the Surgical Oncology Self-Assessment Program, SOSAP, and it was our #1 priority. Under the auspices of now President-elect Ron Weigel and committee, SOSAP was officially launched in April of 2013. It offers over 60 hours of MOC Part 2 credit, enough for each 3-year cycle that you need. In a little less than a year, nearly 300 copies have been sold, and it's right on target for its business plan, totaling almost $1,100 back to pay for itself. in sales, and over 2,500 credits have been issued. Our next priority was to develop SCORE for surgical oncology in cooperation with the American Board of Surgery. Russ Berman, whose tenure as chair of training committee, will end this year. Here he's seen hacksawing a tree because he just found out that he's now the chair of the newly formed SCORE committee. He thought he was going to have some rest. Which will, and what they're planning on doing is develop online modules on surgical oncology, which eventually will be available to everyone for MOC as well. There are several other fellow benefits. Particularly, I want to point out the Fellows National Video Conference that Dave Bartlett runs and has been a phenomenal success with the fellows. Under the direction of Carol Swallow and her committee, young faculty and fellows can also compete for research grants and have been awarded $2.5 million from the SSO since 2007 and now through the foundation. Our last educational retreat, which was held in August of last year, helping the EC further to define our direction. The first obvious need was to create an educational platform to house all SSO educational activities, especially by enhancing the website and IT capabilities. There was also resounding resolve to make it a more data-driven organization. 2 years ago at the SSO, we offered a single session with Part 2 MOC credit. The first SSO virtual meeting was launched in 2013 with a total of 1,500 meeting attendees accessing the content. Available again this year, the on-site MOC Cafe also was offered at the SSO in 2013. A total of about 302 meeting attendees accessed the available 5 self-assessment modules, with a 2013 virtual meeting having almost 7,500 visits. Online, within hours, 12 hours to be exact here, the website is fully searchable by session and related popular content, mobile phone or iPad. We're working on something for the iPhone. Part 2 MOC modules from last year's meeting will remain available at our website. You can even take one on maintenance of certification. The MOC Cafe is offered again this year with 10 sessions from the SSO 2014 meeting and up to 18 hours in self-assessment credit, and may be applied toward Part 2. And this is this year's mobile phone app to access meeting content. I want to say many thanks to Dr. Grobemeyer and his committee for putting together a fabulous program. And they worked very hard this year and presented the program early. And it's really great that it's on virtual meeting, because then I won't miss anything from the meeting. A record 685 abstracts were submitted and received by the SSO. The disease site work groups were engaged in the abstract review. It was a blinded process and very fair and judged by your peers. It developed disease site work tracks for the meeting, specific disease site specific tracks, and developed 3 pre-meeting hands-on skills workshops with the aid of our host, Dr. Nabil Wasif, and the Mayo Clinic, who generously donated many things. Further plans are to collect data around the annual meeting to improve content and meet needs, so please help us filling out these surveys and evaluations. I know it's a pain, but that's going to help us bring better information to you. A task force has been developed and to help us develop a formalized template for the meeting so that it can be produced well in advance of the meeting. Another area we have made strides in was the intersocietal collaborations, whether in the United States or internationally. We have many official representatives to various organizations. Building consensus is a whole different level of complexity. Probably no one has done it better than immediate past President Monica Morrow, who has envisioned, in collaboration with Mina Moron and funded by the Komen Society, the SSO Astro Consensus Conference on Margins for Breast Conservation Surgery, which primarily asks the question, what margin width minimizes the risk of ipsilateral breast tumor recurrence? Based on extensive review of the literature and meta-analysis presented there by Dr. Husami and colleagues, the SSO, ASTRO, ASCO, and ASBS developed and approved the consensus statement, which was published simultaneously in February in the SSO Annals of Surgical Oncology, as well as Astro and ASCO journals. In giving the William L. McGuire Lecture at San Antonio, Dr. Morrow summarized that it is possible that wider margins may have conveyed a small benefit in the past, but multimodality therapy obviates the need for wider margins. Evidence that margins more clearly than no ink on tumor are beneficial and the benefit is lacking, and that avoidance of routine re-excision benefits patients and decreases healthcare costs. Last month, Dr. Goldmeyer and I attended the International Breast Consensus Conference in Kyoto, Japan, led by Dr. Toy and Dr. Eric Weiner, and the proceedings of which were published from the 2009 Consensus Conference in the Annals of Surgical Oncology, and hopefully will be again from this year's Consensus Conference. There is a funded now Consensus Conference on training in hepatobiliary surgery, which is in collaboration with the ASTS, the HPBA, and the SSO, with Mitch Posner and Russ Berman representing us. Our Outreach Committee is chaired by Dr. Ben Anderson, and the International Affairs Committee by Dr. Leon and Dr. Ben Anderson. Dr. Rhonda Henry Tillman is our Vice Chair for Diversity, and Dr. Chris Pezzi is our Vice Chair for Community Surgeons. Dr. Rhonda Henry Tillman and Lisa Newman, along with the ASCO and the Live Strong Foundation, worked with a multidisciplinary planning group of 10 other organizations to develop interdisciplinary e-learning activities. The programs offered are designed to increase awareness of disparities and improve care in disparate populations. This is just one example of the modules that were developed, and you can access 3 of these through the SSO website, I believe for MOC Part 2 credit. Best of SSO is inter-societal and international outreach, and in March of SSO, Executive Council approved implementing a pilot international organizational relations program to assure SSO's place as a leader in the global surgical oncology community. Best of SSO, which formalizes the sharing of SSO educational content from the annual meeting with selected societies around the world, is one of the 4 core initiatives in this program, and it has already made significant headway. Modeled after a similar ASCO initiative, Best of SSO has previewed first in Mexico, I think in 2009 actually, and Dr. Hector Martinez Said, then director of the NCI and president of the Society of Mexican Oncology, Rich Anderson, Charles Balch, Ms. Posner, and myself represented the SSO, joining experts with the Institut Nacional de Cancerologia and other prestigious institutions. Here we are with the Indian Society of Surgical Oncology last November. Shown are Dr. Ari, Dr. Raj, the Indian Association of Surgical Oncology past president, Dr. Charles Balch, and President Dave. This seminal meeting represents a collaboration among the Indian Association of Surgical Oncology, Association of Radiation Oncologists of India, Indian Society of Medical and Pediatric Oncology, and the Indian Society of Oncology. Our SSO leaders, Monica, Charles, Mitch, and Jeff in Egypt, shown here with the leadership of the Egyptian SSO president with Dr. Ashraf and Dr. Zagul and colleagues. In other collaborations, Dr. Goldmeyer, Hochwald, and Schwartz represented SSO at the Japanese Society of Gastroenterological Surgery, the JSGS, presenting a joint symposium on current treatment strategies for esophageal gastric junction tumors. Here we see Dr. Sasako, who is a gastric surgeon in Japan, with them. Also, SSO co-sponsored SO 2013 melanoma course in Greece. Several SSO leaders were present at the event, including Dr. Charles Balch. Other participating organizations included the European Association of Dermato-Oncology and the Hellenic Society of Medical Oncology and Surgical Oncology. At this year's SSO, a joint symposium is being held and co-sponsored with SO, European Society of Surgical Oncology, Current Controversies in Neuroendocrine Tumors. SOSO President, Professor Graham Poston, and shown here, President-elect Professor Ricardo Odicio, are serving on the SSO 2014 faculty. In 2013, the SSO approved the development of a new short-term international career development exchange program in collaboration with selected surgical oncology partner organizations. The participants are attending the annual conference, followed by a visit to 2 or 3 academic institutions in their specialty areas. Dr. Manjunath from the Indian Society is a professor of surgical oncology at St. John's Medical College Hospital in India. Drs. Hofstetter and Swisher will be hosting him at MD Anderson, and Dr. Posner at the University of Chicago. Dr. Hirona, who is here, is an assistant professor in the 2nd Department of Surgery at Wakayama Medical University in Japan. Dr. Bartlett at UPMC will host her, Dr. Jeff Drebin at the University of Penn, Drs. Coit and Allen at Memorial, Dr. Tolosa at Moffitt, and Dr. Moran at MD Anderson will be their host for those sites. Dr. Jose Francisco Corona Cruz is a surgical oncologist at the NCI Mexico. He will be hosted by Dr. Tolosa at Moffitt and Dr. Moran at MD Anderson. Likewise, the SSO members have been offered a great opportunity by the Royal Society of Medicine in the United Kingdom and the Royal Society of Medicine Foundation in the U.S. to apply for a visiting professorship in UK. And you can apply for that online by accessing our website. We've also, with Dr. Mira from Japan, are negotiating, and it looks like it's going to go through, to have an exchange program for gastric surgery, which is a fabulous opportunity for our members as well. So we're trying to negotiate a lot of these so that we can, people who do particular surgeries well, we can exchange and learn from them, and they can learn from us. Now, I just wanted to orient everybody. Do I have a pointer? All right. That's Arkansas. That's the #1 question I get asked. Where is Arkansas? All right. What I wanted to show here, though, is the stars symbolize the presence of representatives from institutions within that state that have members on one of our committees or councils. We are not an elitist society. We have members from all over. There are just 12 states without representatives, and all but 1 has less than 10 members. And 2 have none. Alaska doesn't send us anybody. In an online process, a record 175 members expressed interest in 40 open committee positions for the 2014-15 leadership year. Now, those who didn't get on a committee, we retain those names, and that's the list we go to as committee assignments come up. So if you're interested in doing that, please get your name on that list. Now, international attendance has always been high, with Dr. Harold Hoekstra always bringing a large contingent from the Netherlands year after year. Accordingly, there are representatives on SSO committees from Brazil, Canada, Chile, Egypt, Greece, Italy, Israel, Japan, Mexico, the Netherlands, and Spain. SSO is a global society, and an inclusive one. What I wanted to point out through all of this is that education is global, can be translated into many ways and many languages. The SSO has invested over $500,000 in educational initiatives and established several funds that will further add to our armamentarium of SSO educational products. And the reason we can do that has to do with success of the #1 global educational tool that I haven't even talked about yet, and that is the Annals of Surgical Oncology, for which this marks the 20th anniversary. In June of 1992, the then SSO Publications Chair, Dr. Robert Barrett, proposed to the SSO Executive Council that the SSO publish a bi-monthly oncology journal. Dr. Winchester and Bland proposed the name, the Annals of Surgical Oncology. At that same time, the Executive Council unanimously appointed Dr. Charles Balch, Editor-in-Chief, Dr. Donald Morton, Murray Brennan, Ted Copeland, Associate Editors, and Mark Rowe, Assistant Editor, later to become Executive Editor. In January of 1994, Annals launched with 6 issues and 534 pages per year. In January of this year, Annals celebrated 20 years of publication with 16 issues and over 4,000 pages published in 2013 alone. This represents a dramatic growth in accepted manuscripts per year and also published pages per year. When compared to these leading journals, Annals has surpassed them in terms of total documents published each year, Annals being in the green. We garner 2,000 global peer reviewers for over 3,000 submitted manuscripts each year and are able to have an average review time of 34 days and time to publication on only 31 days. The impact factor has dramatically risen with a citation index in 2 years of 4.12. Average citations per year per article over a rolling 4-year span is high, with the Annals of Surgery being in red and the Annals of Surgical Oncology being in green. As well, and the total citations over a 3-year running period is here, and you can see the dramatic rise in green of the Annals of Surgical Oncology. Now, seeking intersocietal collaboration, we became the official organ of the ASBS, the American Society of Breast Surgeons, in 2010, nearly doubling our readership. ASBS members greatly expanded our community-based surgeon audience, thus complementing and enriching our journal content. We further expanded our reach globally, receiving manuscripts from 45 different countries in 2013. And the journal has become one of an international collaboration in surgical oncology, with this being the percent of manuscripts that have authors from more than one country. With more than 500,000 downloads per year, all this has made a huge impact on the society with increased dollars to help program, plus full support of the editorial staff. And we've invested millions of dollars back into the SSO over the years. And all this while remaining the cost in 1994 of the journal was $75, and today it's $75. Very few people can say something like that. And for the first time, a year ago, we developed part 2 for the articles, and we've published one every month so far. Now I would like to ask Dr. Brennan to come up. Dr. Copeland could not be here. Please come on up, Marie. And I want to help me honor, they were both associate editors, as was Dr. Morton. And I want to help me honor Dr. Balch, Dr. Rowe, and the managing editor, Deb Whippen, who I will ask to come to the podium. And while they're coming up, I would like all the past and present editorial board members to stand and be recognized. Where's Dr. Rowe? Dr. Rowe is working on papers. If you'll come over here, we want an opportunity. I would like to give you these engraved pins that are made from the lava of Mount Vesuvius. I just love that. Like lava, you're on fire, formidable, and can't be stopped, with an ever-flowing lava of new ideas. So I would like to give you these, and they're engraved with your name and editorialship.
Thank you so much. Oops.